In 1966, the Chicago Bears drafted the son of a Pennsylvania coal miner in the 4th round. Doug Buffone would go on to play 15 seasons for the Bears and later be named one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. His allegiance to the Bears never waned, even when he took to the microphone and witnessed some horrendous Bears teams.
The fact is, there's not the fear put into them, because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job, or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's.
Doug told it like it is, and that's part of the reason his nephew John has dedicated this show to Doug. And now John Buffone is spreading Buffone-branded beratements just like his uncle.
Win the football game. You're the head coach. I don't care what you have your fingers in. I don't care what you're meddling in. You're the head freaking coach. We get it. You're the most important guy on the staff. You don't have to keep trying to legitimize that.
And he's got pep talks too.
I love this team. And I know everyone watching and listening loves this team. So while we may be pessimistic and cynical, every one of us still has hope that the stars will align at some point. And if that ever does happen, you'll be glad you stuck around.
John is telling it like it is here on Buffone 55. And joining John are Alyssa Barbieri, managing editor of USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and also Danny Shimon, lead game and draft analyst for the Barroom Network. Buckle up and bear down. This is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to the season premiere of Buffone 55, lucky number 7. I cannot believe we have been on the air for 7 seasons. Maybe it's because time stands still when you're a Bears fan. My name is John Buffone, and I am so happy to be back. I am so excited to chop it up with the Barflies. We got some new features coming to Buffone 55 this year, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, I am thrilled to welcome back my co-host and producer. You may know her from her work on the NFL Wire at USA Today, especially Bears Wire. Alyssa Barbieri. Alyssa, we are back for another Bears season. How you doing?
I'm doing, man, you got me fired up already. And we're just in the open. I am so ready. I can't believe there's football next week. It feels like all is right in the world now that we're back. We're back here doing our thing, and I'm just so excited.
You know, eventually we're going to have a winning team to talk about, but you know what? We have fun talking about the Bears no matter what their record is. We love chopping up with everybody in the chat room, and I'm so appreciative of people that are already in the chat room. There were people in the chat room before we even went live, which I can't tell you how much that means to me. I love seeing everybody already talking about football, talking about the Bears, talking about the best time of the year. We are close to week 1, and we're going to preview the Chicago Bears today. But we did talk about some new features on the show, and now it's time to unveil the biggest addition to Buffone 55. You may know him from Draft on Tap. He's the lead draft analyst here at the Barroom Network, and he can help us go through the nuts and bolts of this Bears squad. Let's welcome Danny Shimon to Buffone 55 as a full-time panelist. Danny, welcome. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I'm pumped, man. You know, let's talk about you getting her pumped. I'm already pumped. Joining this great team. You said, you know, year 7 for you guys, year 1 for me, and just honored. And like I said, it's a great, just really excited to get going and talk about hopefully a good team this season.
You know what? Everyone's undefeated going into week 1, especially the Bears. So we're going to talk about this squad in detail before they go into week 1. We'll preview that whole Packers deal next week, but we're here to talk about the roster as it is right now. The news out of Hallis Hall today was the 2023 roster has been finalized, kind of, because there was some waiver action that we can go through. But nevertheless, most of the 2023 Bears roster is locked in, and we are here to go through it in detail today, which the expertise of Danny and Alyssa will come in handy, and I'm here to navigate the waters and meatball it up with everybody in the chat room. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be back in this position. But let's start with the most important position, the quarterback. And I believe that we have some graphics to go along with this. There they are, as if we didn't know QB1 will be Justin Fields. But kind of a surprise coming out of the preseason. Number 2, QB2, Tyson Bagent, the secret agent, is going to be the number 2 quarterback behind Justin Fields, the young kid with a great story coming out of, I believe Shepherd in Division II. Let's talk about, let's go ahead. I mean, we're going to talk about Justin Fields for basically the entire season. So let's talk about Tyson Bagent real quick. Danny, why do you think that the Bears ultimately decided to go with Bagent over PJ Walker or even Nate Peterman?
I think both, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus have said that this guy has really come on and has taken the opportunity and is really impressed. And the one thing about him, and he came out of Shepherd University, a Division II school. But the one thing with Tyson Bagent, and you saw a little bit of it at the Senior Bowl when we were down there in Mobile, and this is a guy that the stage isn't too big for him. Now, I know, Division II school, but he started, I believe, over 50 career starts, started as a true freshman, won the Division II Heisman, if you will, as a junior, put up, pick time stats. He just talks about, a guy that just feels like he belongs. The stage is not too big for him. That's one thing I noticed about him. I tweeted it last week when watching him, play against the Bills. It's like, it just feels like he's comfortable. He doesn't have that deer in the headlights look. It's not, the stage, like I said, not too big for him. He thinks that he's confident in himself. And the only thing that concerns me about having a rookie come in is just, obviously, God forbid, if Justin Fields goes down, now you're talking about a cat who's got no experience. But the way he's picked up the offense, I think the Bears coaching staff feels confident that if thrusted into an emergency role, that he'll be able to come in and sufficiently move the offense. The one thing that they've talked about is they've always wanted to have a player. Obviously, he's not going to be the same type of athlete that Justin Fields is, but the offense doesn't necessarily have to entirely change, and that means that a guy can move, roll out, use his legs as a weapon, and we saw some of that in the preseason with Tyson. I think that really kind of opened up the eyes of the coaching staff. Said, hey, you know what? He's not going to be the athlete that Justin is, but he's also a guy that we can, roll out of the pocket, get him on the move. And again, he's a guy that's comfortable in terms of, getting the ball down the field and going through a progression and all that stuff. So I think that's where Tyson came out and won the position, basically.
Alyssa, you and I were kind of fanning over Bagent. We like what we saw in the preseason. I assume that you're happy about this move because it gives them a guy that they can develop within their system, homegrown, so to speak. They bring him in and they can bring him along, and this will be the only pro offense that he's ever known, so it doesn't have to forget a lot of stuff whenever he's learning this offense. But to Danny's point, you do have a rookie there with very little experience. If something were to happen to Justin Fields, what do you think about Bagent being the number 2?
Yeah, I think it was clear to anyone who, was at training camp practices or were watching the preseason that, Bagent was the best option at QB2 there. And, it was very surprising. I mean, I'd heard such great things about him, but to actually see it and to see how, like Danny was talking about, how comfortable, how poised he was operating the offense. I remember that second game, I believe was the Colts game, when Walker was struggling and Bagent came in, and the offense just looked completely different. He looked in firm control. He looked like a seasoned pro. He knew how to operate it. They were marching down the field. It was very impressive. And I mean, to your point, it is a little unnerving to have a rookie back there backing up Justin Fields, especially because Fields is yet to play a full season. So, I mean, at this point, we have to kind of assume, hopefully not, but I mean, we have to plan that, he might not play an entire season. So at some point we could see Bagent. But I think that the fact that Bagent made the 53-man roster, that he made it over Walker, over Peterman, it just speaks to how the coaching staff believes in him. And, Luke Getsy got to work with him down in the Senior Bowl. And I think the confidence they have in him and the confidence he has in himself and just how he's operating this offense, I'm excited to see, hopefully not in the regular season. I want Justin Fields to play every single game, unless the Bears blow out the Packers in week 1, and then we see Bagent come in there in the second half, then I'll be looking forward to that.
That's hopefully this will be the last time we lead the show off with Tyson Bagent. We all like him, but if we're in week 4 and 5 and we're leading off with Tyson Bagent talk, we're gonna be in a little hot water. So we got to give. Yeah, we had to give QB2 his rightful due here to start off the show. But let's talk about QB1. We don't have to go into real in-depth stuff because we know what we expect of Justin Fields. We know what has to come from Justin Fields this year. But Danny, what to you is a successful season for Justin Fields?
Yeah, I mean, the narrative out there is that this is a make or break season for Justin Fields. For me, it's not. I mean, this is year 2 in the offense, and I think what I want to see improvements, and the improvements I want to see, I just want to see Justin in terms of his play clock in the pocket, be able to kind of maybe stay there a little bit longer. It just seems like whenever he feels like he's going to be pressured or the offensive line having a bad game, his play clock speeds up, and I think he's like one read, maybe two, and he's gone. And that's the one thing I want him to kind of just settle down. This is a lot of it is a rhythm-based offense. So, pre-snap, determine what you're going to do with the football, read the defense, line up your protection, have a plan in mind in terms of what's going to happen post-snap. And once the ball is snapped, now go through your progression. What does the safeties do? Are they in a cover 2 shell? So on and so forth. Know where you're going with the football. By the time that his plant foot is hit his third step back, he's got to get rid of that football. No more holding on to the ball and all that stuff. So, last year, when I watched his tape, it seemed like he was just holding on to the ball a little bit too long, waiting for a guy to get open. Now with weapons like Claypool and Moore and healthy Mooney, the tight ends with Tanyan and Komet, I expect him to kind of go through his progression and bam, know where to go with the football as soon as the ball is snapped. There's going to be times where the offensive line breaks down, the blocking breaks down, then Justin's just going to have to kind of, just do what things Justin can do, right? Tuck the ball and make things happen with his feet, which is fine. But I just wanted to see that progression come up. He's going to miss open receivers. He's not going to see everything on the field. It's still going to be a process of him getting better and better. But that timing, that rhythm, the play clock, and in terms of it in his head, in the pocket, know when to get rid of the football. And a key thing is you'll know early on if Justin Fields has gotten better is if he takes the check down passes, if he takes the ball in the flat, the little curl route to the tight end in the middle of the field, and might be at 2nd and 10, take that 2-yard pass to the tight end and make it 3rd and 8 instead of hold on to the ball, trying to see if a receiver gets open downfield, maybe taking a sack. Now it's 3rd and 17 instead of 3rd and 8 or something like that. So that's where I want to see those little minor progressions, and eventually once he masters the offense completely, then you're going to see him just kind of take off from there.
How about you, Alyssa? What's a successful season for Justin Fields for you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Danny said. I mean, we know how dangerous of an athlete that Justin Fields is, and I think he's the best rushing quarterback in the NFL. Sorry, Lamar. So we already know that part of his game, which he had to discover last season, but now we need to see him improve as a passer. It's really as simple as that. And when you look what the Bears did this offseason, they are setting him up for success in the passing game. Everything that they did, we are finally seeing a regime build around the quarterback, right? He went out and got him a number 1 receiver in DJ Moore. Shored up the offensive line, although the injuries, I mean, that just comes with the territory of being a Bears fan, I guess. The injuries are going to happen. So, but everything that Ryan Poles did this offseason is setting Fields up for success because he has to determine is Fields going to be the guy. I mean, I don't think that, like Danny said, this is a make or break year, but we do need to see some sort of progress. It can't be a repeat of last season. And I know that Ryan Poles was asked during his press conference today, what are you looking for from Fields? And he said he wants to see more wins. And while I don't think wins are a quarterback stat, if Fields does take that next step in his development, naturally the Bears should be winning more football games. So I think that's something, that we should be looking to see. They should be winning a lot more than 3 games this season if Fields takes that step. So, I mean, I really want to see him just take that step forward as a passer. We saw that at Ohio State. I did as a Michigan fan. Trust me, I watched him obliterate my team. So I know that he's capable of that. So, I mean, it's as simple as that. You want to see that progress in the passing game, and you want to see him kind of, once he gets that in the NFL, you could blend those 2 elements of his game, the running and the throwing, and you're going to have a true dual threat quarterback.
All right, we talked about the quarterbacks. Let's move our way down to the roster. Let's go down to the halfbacks and the fullbacks. We have the running back Khalil Herbert, Dante Foreman, Rashawn Johnson, Travis Homer, and Kerry Blasingame. Alyssa, I want to start with you. Compared to last year, because you have David Montgomery here last year. He's no longer on the roster, but they draft Johnson. How do you think this running back room compares to last year? And is there a possibility it could be better?
Yeah, I think it is better. And I hesitate to say that because, I mean, David Montgomery was a really solid back. But when you look at this group, top to bottom compared to last year, I think they have a lot more depth at running back. And, Khalil Herbert's that lead back right now. And the Bears are saying, he hasn't done anything to lose the job. But I also don't think, that he could be the, the lead back going into the end of the season. Hopefully Rashawn Johnson, hopefully he works his way up there. But I think they have a three-headed monster at running back there. Deontay Foreman is someone that's gone very, under the radar. There's been a lot of love for Roshan, a lot of love for Khalil. So, and then Travis Homer too, who's a solid special teams guy, and also he's good at catching passes at the backfield. I mean, I think this is a very deep running back group. And when you couple that with Justin Fields and his rushing ability, hopefully he's not rushing as often as he did last season. But when you throw him into the mix, I really don't see why there shouldn't be another top rushing offense in 2023.
Danny, what do you think about this group? And do you believe that Khalil Herbert will or will not be the lead back for all 17 games this year?
No, John, I like this group. Just like Alyssa said, I like the group. I like the mix of it. I think Khalil Herbert, I'm a huge Khalil Herbert fan. I was a huge fan of his coming out of Virginia Tech. I think the Bears got a steal in the 6th round. I think he's going to go ahead and prove this year that he is going to be that steal that I was talking about coming out of the draft. But the one thing, I think this system suits him, this style suits him better than a David Montgomery, meaning because I think Herbert's vision and his patience are a step above of Montgomery. Montgomery more of that power downhill back. Montgomery was always better when he had a fullback and he was in I formation, had a lead blocker. Montgomery was also a guy that could jump in and out of holes. With this system that they're running here now is you have to have that patience and the vision to be able to feel and see the cutback lane develop, plant and cut up field. And we've seen last year, the couple of big runs where Khalil Herbert had, a 50-yard run and a 40-yard run. It was where he kind of let the offensive line just kind of do their thing, find the crease, see that cutback lane, using that vision, that patience, and then just plant and go. He's got that burst. He's got that speed where he saw it in that preseason game where he took a small, shovel pass from Justin Fields and took it all the way to the house. So he brings that element, that home run potential, even though he's not a blazer by all means, but he's got that, long speed, long play potential that Montgomery just didn't have, unfortunately. So I was a big David Montgomery fan as well. But I think this system actually fits Khalil Herbert to a T. And then you bring in a Foreman who kind of like a Montgomery, who's a downhill thumper, a guy you can line up and put a fullback in front of him, line up in the I formation. Now you can bring a guy to come in and get those 1 or 2 yards that you need. And Rashawn Johnson is a guy the Bears love. I like come out of Texas. When I was watching Bijan Robinson, I was also watching Rashawn Johnson as well. And the one thing about Johnson is he's developed in terms of the passing game. He's a pretty good catcher out of the backfield. He's a very good pass defense, and I think that's a guy, another way that can be able to pound some tough yards in between the tackles, but also gives you an ability to kind of break free from those tackles and pull off a 12 or 15-yard run. But the one thing with Herbert, I got a question is the question that's always been about him is his pass protection. That's something that we haven't seen yet in the preseason. Has he improved? That's something that's going to be an onus I put on Khalil Herbert. If you want to maintain and keep this starting position, you're going to have to be able to step up your game in terms of a pass protection. If he does that, and I think Khalil Herbert will be the far away the lead back on this offense.
A pretty deep group of running backs. I think most Bears fans are happy with the depth they have there. If one goes down, one can be serviceable to step in. It's from 1 to 3, although, Travis Homer, like Alyssa said, a solid special teamer. And, Blazing Game is a good fullback. So I think that they have a really solid running back room going into 2023. Potentially could be more productive than the one last year. Let's go to the wide receivers now, because this is a very interesting group and vastly different than it was going into the start of last year, with DJ Moore as the number 1, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, Velus Jones, Tyler Scott, Equanimeous St. Brown, and the newly acquired Trent Taylor off of waivers coming over from Cincinnati, who we assume will be the punt returner going into 2023. We don't have to spend 5 minutes on each guy, but Danny, I will start with you. Tell me, can you talk to me about the depth of this and what each one of these guys can bring to the table?
Yeah, this is the group that we think has been vastly improved by Ryan Poles and company. I think bringing obviously DJ Moore and it now allows everyone else to kind of slot down. Chase Claypool, less pressure on him now. He could just be a big guy on the outside, uses athletic ability, his big catch radius to get downfield and make jump ball plays. For example, Darnell Mooney goes from being a number 1 receiver to potentially a number 3 receiver. I think that slots him in a more, advantageous role for him as well. You can use him out of the slot. You can use him on bubble screens, slip screens, so on and so forth. Utilize his running ability downfield. So I think that kind of, even though I had questions about DJ Moore being a number 1 overall receiver, we'll see how that plays out throughout the season. But I think just the talent he brings, and we've seen it already in the preseason. You give him a 10-yard, not even a right receiver slip screen, and he goes all the way. You last week, a 15, 20-yard hitch route, turns it back upfield, breaks tackles, and he's gone for 40 yards. So he brings that big play potential. Now you add that with Mooney, with Claypool, Tyler Scott, the rookie from Cincinnati. He might not, come up there with 60, 70 receptions, but he's going to bring an element that the Bears don't have, and that's going to be a speed element. A guy that's got legit 4.3, 4.4 speed, probably running out of the slot. So now that takes less pressure off of Velus Jones. You can kind of let him develop into a role here on offense as well. So, I think everyone just kind of fits in there nicely to a T now compared to what you had last year. Last year, we're talking about Byron Pringle being our number 1 receiver. I think Byron Pringle's even on NFL roster right now. That's how bad it was last year. So, I mean, that's just the added talent in that room. What's going to give you that big play potential and also help the development of Justin Fields as well.
Yeah, the conversations we're having about the wide receivers this year is vastly different than what we were doing in August in 2022. Alyssa, how much better do you feel about this wide receiving core this year than you did last year?
Oh my God, so much better. I mean, just here, I forgot about Byron Pringle somehow. And now I'm back there at the beginning of the year. Okay, no more. This is 2023. We have an actual wide receiver core. Super excited too. Like Danny was saying, this is important for the development of Justin Fields, right? This is an important season for him. And, he actually has some top receivers around him. And, it's very interesting that the Bears are carrying 7 receivers. So I'm curious to see if that's something that's going to, be the case for, how long is that going to be the case? Is it Velus has, so much time to prove himself? Could he be on the chopping block? I mean, I'm interested to see how that pans out. But I mean, they do have the abundance of talent. I think at receiver it's impressive. I mean, DJ Moore, the fact that his first touch was a touchdown is just crazy to me. I have him on my fantasy team. I had to do it, and hopefully I don't jinx him. So sorry, DJ. But yeah, I'm just excited to see the depth of talent that Justin Fields is going to have in the passing game and what these guys can do, especially like Darnell Mooney coming back from injury. He was the number 1 receiver last year, and it's something that I think he's a really good number 2 receiver. So I think him and Claypool are going to benefit from having DJ Moore out there. And I'm really excited to see what Tyler Scott can do as well. Just make sure you're catching that ball, kid.
That's right. Speaking of catching footballs, let's go over to the tight ends now, because this is a really interesting group, if you ask me. You got Cole Kmet, you have Robert Tonyan, and then the ageless Mercedes Lewis comes in as the number 3 tight end. Alyssa, I'm gonna kick it over to you. I think this is a really good tight end room, because Cole Kmet, obviously he gets paid, and you're hoping that he takes his next step in his progression. Robert Tonyan has already shown that he can come down with big time balls. He can be a big red zone threat. And then Mercedes Lewis is basically like having another offensive lineman sometimes in there. He's been around the game he's been in the NFL for gosh darn 2 decades here. So what do you think about these tight ends?
Yeah, I think this is the best tight end room that the Bears have had in a long time. And I mean, just top to bottom, Kmet, Tonyan, and Lewis, who, first off, congratulations, Cole, getting that extension, well-deserved. But I think just like what Luke Getsy, I feel like he's looking at like what he has, especially in Kmet and Tonyan, and just kind of being like, okay, I'm excited now. Now I can really start getting things going. And I think for Justin Fields too, we saw how Kmet was his safety blanket last season, and now he has someone in Robert Tonyan who is just money in the red zone. So I'm excited to see how they factor into the passing game, because there are a lot of pass catchers and only 1 ball to go around. So it's really going to be interesting to see how some of these guys are utilized, and excited to see some two tight end sets with Kmet and Tonyan. It's going to be exciting. And Mercedes Lewis, I mean, blocking, especially when this is a run first kind of offense, at least for right now. The Bears are always going to run the ball. So having Lewis in there and Kmet is a solid blocker as well. So, I mean, I'm really excited for this tight end group. I think this is one of the most improved positions this offseason, and I think it's going to be really beneficial to the offense in the long run.
I'm going to kick it to you real quick, Danny, but I got to go with this. I got to just mention this comment in the chat. Wasn't Mercedes Lewis in Tecmo Bowl, which for my 80s and 90s friends, that's a good pull. I like that. That was really good because I love Tecmo Bowl, and I think Mercedes Lewis was in that game. But Danny, what do you think about the tight ends and top to bottom how the depth plays out here?
And I agree with you, John. I think this is probably the best tight end room the Bears have had in quite a while. I think the Green Bay imports with Tunyon and Mercedes Lewis both bring different kind of features, both bring different kind of strengths to this offense. I think Tunyon allows the Bears now to have a true flex tight end, a guy that can line up and slot and be another big receiver, if you will, down the football field. We forget that 2 years ago he had 11 touchdowns, in Green Bay's offense. So the Bears are running a very similar system here, obviously to Green Bay. So I think that's going to be a nice plus there to kind of offset or actually complement Cole Kmet, who's more of that inline wide blocking tight end. And of course, we'd like to see Kmet, just kind of improve of last year, where he left the team with 7 touchdowns, kind of, take those numbers and get even better this year. And you talk about it, the ageless wonder, Mercedes Lewis. I mean, this is the guy that is a hell of a blocking tight end. A team that's going to be heavy run. It's going to rely on the run to kind of set up that play action. I think Mercedes Lewis is going to be invaluable in terms of the blocker and also in terms of that leadership that he brings to the locker room as well. So that's one thing that you kind of overlook. The Bears have, I believe, that is the 5th or 6th youngest team in football, and a vet like Mercedes Lewis on that team helps kind of bring some wisdom, if you will, to that locker room. So I think I am really excited. I think Tunyon was a very, very underrated pickup by Ryan Poles this offseason. Something that really kind of went under the radar, but I think he's poised to have a nice season as well.
I'm just so happy that we're back doing this show because I'm just watching the chat, and there's some the Barflies are on the top of their game. They don't need a preseason. They got jokes on jokes on jokes, and I'm loving this. And unfortunately, Mercedes Lewis is getting the brunt of it, but Bayless Jones is getting thrown in there as well. But let's end this segment with the offensive linemen. Let's run down there. Braxton Jones, Cody Whitehair, Nate Davis, Lucas Patrick, Darnell Wright, and then Tevin Jenkins, Dan Feeney, Carter Bourne, and Kramer round out the room. Danny, I want to start with you because do you believe that they are done adding to this room, or they could go out and pick up somebody that maybe gets cut or on waivers, or do you think this is what they're going to go with?
I think that this is what they're going to go with. Obviously, we heard today that Tevin Jenkins is going to go on IR. He's going to be out for the first 4 weeks. So who starts at left guard? Was it going to be Whitehair? Are they going to put Lucas Patrick at center? Is a new guy, Dan Feeney, up to par in which he can come in and play left guard? Because he's got that versatility where he can play center and guards. I think they're going to keep Whitehair a left guard, and they're going to put Lucas Patrick at center if he's healthy. I think that they're going to roll with that, in terms of starting off the season and see what happens when Tevin Jenkins comes back. But obviously, for me, my key thing is obviously the improvement of Braxton Jones. I mean, he gets beaten up a lot for last year, as his rookie campaign. But I think you're going to see a better Braxton Jones this year. And obviously Darnell Wright at right tackle, if he can go ahead and solidify that side, and you have 2 bookend tackles right there. Nate Davis, if he's healthy, him and Darnell Wright are going to be a nasty combination on that right side. You're going to see a lot of the Bears running backs going to the right side, especially on short yard situations, because both those guys are just nasty in terms of, being able to move people off their spots and getting movement at the line of scrimmage. So I think that's going to be key there as well. So as long as Lucas Patrick, or if it's Doug Kramer at center, can maintain the protections and get everything set up and squared away, I think Whitehair is going to be just a solid veteran at left guard until Tevin Jenkins comes back. And again, Braxton Jones, I expect this kid to take the next step. And I think the Bears are solidified both tackle spots with these last 2 draft classes. And then if Nate Davis in there, and again, Tevin Jenkins comes back, and now you're going to solidify, make it a bigger, more nastier offensive line. I think this is where we're going to see this line get better as the season goes on and everyone else gets healthy.
Alyssa, we talk about, the weapons being so important for Justin Fields' progression, but just as important as the offensive line. Do you believe this squad can keep him upright enough that he can take that next step in his progression?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? And I think that, we saw Ryan Poles go out and really, assemble the offensive line that he believes is going to keep Fields upright. I mean, right now, obviously, Tevin Jenkins is on IR, so he's going to miss the first month at least. But when you kind of look at, the shifting that was made along the offensive line, Braxton Jones and the decision to stick with him at left tackle because Poles and co were encouraged by what they saw going out and getting Darnell Wright with the number 10 pick. I mean, hopefully I don't want to see Justin Fields getting sacked 56 times in 15 games again. So I think that, Ryan Poles really did his work in going and finding these guys that are solid in pass protection, right? As well as that they can run block. So, I mean, we talk about the receivers, like you mentioned, and it's important to have that number one wide receiver, but it's also important to make sure that your quarterback has time to throw, especially with Fields where, he needs to speed his clock up a little bit. So he's someone where we saw last season where he would just tuck it and go immediately as the pocket collapsed. So, I mean, hopefully this is the line that's going to keep him upright. I'm going to have to wait until I see it. But I definitely think you can't argue that they didn't get better this offseason, especially starting with getting Sam Mustipher out of there at center. So it's going to be interesting because immediately from week one, already the original starting five is not going to be the starting five. We didn't even make it to week one. I mean, already the Bears had how many different starting offensive line combinations last season? They weren't able to get that chemistry down. And unfortunately, it already started in the summer, but, hopefully they can make it work.
We're all hoping. We're hoping that it's a stable front for Justin Fields, and they're able to take the next step. But speaking of the next step, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to the defense and the special teams and the practice squad and all that stuff later on in the show. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, the first B55 of the season. Stick around. You're watching Buffone 55 right here on the Barroom Network.
Instead of him always looking to bail and make a play, you see him consistently climbing the pocket. Even if he takes a sack, but he climbs that pocket. And his accuracy compared to what we seen Fields do, Bagent has him beat too.
So KB, you saying that he should start over Fields?
No. Not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying what I've seen. This is why I'm saying Bagent is my number 2. Okay. Yeah. Yes, you do want the experience of a in-game quarterback like a Walker, but it's just things that pop out about Bagent that me personally, there is no cutting him. He's number 2. To have the pocket presence that he has, the awareness, like Jordan says, the way he navigates the pocket, it's so textbook. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. The definition of quarterback climb a pocket is Bagent. And it's like the same thing we said about last week. You just want a young player in here that you can groom. He's here.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Now it's time for our classic B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. So, John, are you feeling a little rusty because it's been a while?
It has been, and I'm going to blow right through that whistle. I can feel it. But we're going to see. It's the preseason for us, so I got a week to kind of work through this before we really hit the big time next week when we preview the Packers game.
Just channel your inner secret Bagent man, and you'll be good.
Secret Bagent man. Here we go.
PJ Walker, Tyson Bagent.
Feeling loose. Let's go.
Okay, John. So last year we heard you say, week after week in the show open, that the Bears were not going to be the worst team in the NFL. Well, they finished with the worst record at 3-13. So what are you going to say about the 2023 Bears? And careful, this might make it in a new open that you'll have to relive week after week. 55 seconds around the clock.
Well, I can tell you that I'm done making guarantees. I made one bold prediction last year, and it crashed and burned so bad that I was humiliated by Louis Riddick on a national stage. So I think I might be done with bold predictions. But I will say this, just having a better record than last year isn't going to be enough. They need to show that the franchise has built some sustainable infrastructure, that we're not going to wait 3 years, get a flash in the pan playoff season, then start all over again. This is a big prove-it year for a lot of people. It's a prove-it year for Ryan Poles. It's our prove-it year for Justin Fields. It's a prove-it year for the coaching staff. And when I say prove-it year, I don't mean that everyone's going to get fired if they don't win the division or make the playoffs, but they need to show real, tangible growth. Their rebuild year went about as well as it could go. They got some big contracts off the book, got some draft capital in the process, found an undrafted gem in Jack Sanborn. Oh, they also got the number 1 overall pick, traded it, and stocked up for their draft chest for the foreseeable future. So 2023 cannot be a stagnant 5-12 year.
Hey, look, you didn't beat the list by too much. Close. Hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for your first series. But like you said, and I'm like, cautious to also say this because this could make it in an open, who knows? But no, like you said, I think with the 2023 Bears, I mean, I don't have super high expectations, but I also have expectations that they're going to make progress. And I look at the Lions from last year as kind of like that model for them to follow, where they're a team where they're not there quite yet, but they have some of the pieces in place, and I think they have the right head coach in place as well to help take them there. And the Bears have a quarterback called named Justin Fields too, which if he takes that step forward, I mean, there's no telling what this team can do. But I do expect them to be in the conversation or in the hunt,
in the hunt
for the playoffs. In the hunt, maybe not making it this season. I mean, prove me wrong, go for it. As long as we get the number 1 pick from the Panthers.
I'll take that. That's fine. We can have everybody else's good pick. I just don't want the Bears to have to be drafting in there over and over again because that means they're not playing very well.
No. Cannot do that. So now, John, to the topic that we're going to be discussing all season, every week, all day. Is Justin Fields a franchise quarterback? And if so, will we be convinced of that by the end of this season? And if he looks like a good quarterback but not an elite passer, do the Bears plan for his replacement in 2024? Good luck keeping it to 55 seconds.
Listen, yes, I believe he is, and I think you'll see some things this year that'll convince a lot of people of that. He has the weapons now. This time last year, we were clinging to the possibility that maybe Velus Jones or Equanimeous St. Brown could blow up and be a legitimate number 2 to Darnell Mooney. Those might be your 5 and 6 guys this year, and then now you see DJ Moore to Mooney to Chase Claypool to Tyler Scott, the 4th-round rookie, throw in Robert Tonyan, and hopefully an improved offensive line. The table is set for Justin Fields to have a much improved season. I do think we need to reevaluate what a successful season looks like in 2023, however. We usually look at the yardage and think, 4,000 yards, that's a really good season. Matt Stafford did it 9 times. Kirk Cousins has done it 7 times. Rodgers did it 10 times. Hell, even Jared Goff did it 3 times. But in an age where a lot of quarterbacks are dual threats, wouldn't 3,000 yards with 2024 touchdowns and maybe 800 to 900 rushing yards with 7 to 8 rushing touchdowns be a pretty damn good season too?
And again, look at you. I mean, you are on fire. You are Tyson Bagent out there. Yeah, speaking of Fields, the quarterback. No, that's a really good point that you made about like how we are measuring Fields' success compared to other quarterbacks, because he's not like other quarterbacks in the NFL, where you have to take into a fact that, while we don't want to see him running as much as last season, that's still an important part of his game. So it will be included. There will be those moments when Fields is in trouble and he gets out of there and turns it into a 60-yard touchdown or some big play. So as you said, we want to see those improvements in the passing game. So I think 3,000 yards, that's, that's a good number to set it at, as well as, 700-800 yards rushing, having him, hopefully he's not just running for his life all season. There's be a lot more designed quarterback runs and, the occasional 60-yard touchdown. I can't believe I just said that like casually because, hey, it's Justin Fields. It happens. But yeah, that's really interesting because we do have to kind of look at Fields' success and how we're measuring it compared to the rest of the league, and we really can't do that.
Well, listen, and I'm not saying that Justin Fields is Michael Vick, but but when you look at Michael Vick's stat line throughout his entire career, he never threw for more than 3,300 yards in a season. But the people say that Michael Vick had some of the most electrifying seasons in NFL history, because when he threw for 2,400 yards in 2006, he also rushed for 1,000 yards, and so he also had 9 rushing touchdowns in 2010 when he only threw for 3,000 yards. So the combined success, I think, has to be taken into account there. Now, is he going to be a rushing quarterback for 1,000 yards in, 10, 15 years? No. But you have to look at it in the now and say, is it a successful season if he throws for 3,000 yards, rushes for 900, has 6, 7, 8 rushing touchdowns, and is responsible for 30 to 33 touchdowns, and yeah, that's a successful season in my eyes. Just because he's not throwing for 4,000 yards with 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, I mean, the game's changing very much so. So I think that we have to be able to evolve our evaluation on what success is as well.
Yeah, and listening to Ryan Poles talk today, and I mentioned it earlier about like what he's looking for is he wants to see more wins. And I think that we saw last season how Fields, I think it was that 3-game stretch where the Bears offense led the league and scoring 30 points a game, and how he was single-handedly keeping them in games. Now, Poles went out and he solidified the defense, addressed some of the weaknesses. So now the defense shouldn't be in that same position. So that should, if Fields kind of does some of, a lot of what he did last season, but hopefully takes that step as a passer, that should equate to more wins.
One would hope.
But again, it's the Bears, so I'm not getting my hopes too high.
Don't assume anything. Don't assume anything.
Never. Okay, so John, and I think Aldo's going to pull it up. I want you to take a look at the 2023 schedule, and I hope it has spaceships on it.
That was our calling card last year.
Oh my God, do we have spaceships?
Well, there's movements on thing. What is this? This is the first time I'm seeing this, and I'm sure
there's Christmas lights.
I'm sure this is just really captivating for the people just listening to the podcast. But I love the new graphics. I think there's champagne in week 17. Is that New Year's? And then Christmas lights.
Oh, I thought they were just like lighting the helmet on fire. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, they're sparklers. Who knows?
That makes sense. Missing the spaceships, but okay. Sorry, we got sidetracked by the schedule. So yeah, okay. So let's go again. So I want you to look at this glorious schedule that Aldo created, and I want you to pick a game or two that you are most looking forward to and why. And good luck keeping this to 55 seconds when you're looking at this beautiful masterpiece.
You know what, Alyssa? I don't have to look very far. It's week 1 hosting Green Bay. You can say that you shouldn't judge too many things off the first game, but Bears fans are, Packers fans are, and so are the national pundits. Alyssa, the Bears are favored in this game. Aaron Rodgers isn't on the other side of the field. The Packers have a first-year starter at quarterback. It's in Chicago. This is the first page of a new chapter in this historic rivalry, and I want to be on the winning side of it. One game does not make a season, but a week 1 victory over the Packers can set the tone for the rest of this season, especially since you don't see them again until week 18 at Lambeau Field. And then another one I'm excited for is week 3 when they travel to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. I like seeing these games on the schedule because then you can see how far away your team really is from being an elite team in the NFL. If they're able to scrap it out with the Chiefs and make it a close game, then you know they're building something great. If they get shellacked from start to finish, then you know there's still a ton of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I want to, Aldo, pull up that schedule again. Let's take a look at this. I'm a visual learner. Thank you very much. No, like you said, John, I mean, week 1, who has not had week 1 circled on their calendar as a Bears? Mm-hmm. I mean, like you said, this is the first, I mean, I can't remember the last time that the Bears have played the Packers when they didn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback on their team.
It's been about 30 years, so not in our lifetime, really.
Never. So this is the start of a new era. I'm like, oh wow, this is like even more like important than I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, week 1, I mean, that's exciting. There's a reason that Fox put that on, that prime late, right? And everyone's gonna be watching that. So I mean, excited to see that first game. And also week 18, because hey, I don't want to get cocky. But hey, it would be nice to sweep the Packers. I mean, I'm just saying.
Oh. Unless week 18 doesn't mean anything because the Bears have already sewn up the division and their secret Bagent man is the QB1 for that game. But but
I like the way you think.
Yeah, I'm not exactly saying that's what's going to happen. But
hey, let's live in the optimism. We don't get to do this often. This is the week when we are undefeated still, and we can just kind of.
You're right. The optimism
get a little overly optimistic, but yeah. Look at like the Packers games, and like you said, they have a few primetime games. But I mean, week 10 against the Panthers. I mean, I want the Panthers to be so bad when that game comes along. I want DJ Moore to get his revenge game. I want the Bears to just swipe the floor with them. I want to help make that pick the number 1 pick, the Panthers one. So, I mean, that's probably the I can't believe I'm excited for a Thursday night game.
They have 2 of them.
Hey, they play on my birthday on Washington, so thank you for that. Because last year,
I'm going to that. I'm going to that game because Washington's only about an hour and a half from where I live, so I'll be going down there on Thursday night. And you remember how bad their Thursday night game against the Commanders was last year. So it's like, hey, let's run that back because that was awesome TV to watch. I'm sure Amazon's thrilled to say, oh, let's run that one back. But they have some real opportunities here because it's not like they're playing juggernauts on Thursday night. They play the Commanders and they play the Panthers. And if they're able to come out of those Thursday night games with wins, then they kind of get that mini bye, and they get a mini bye going into division games. After week 5, after the Thursday game, they don't play for 10 days, and then they play the Vikings. And then you look at week 10, they play on the they have a nice little layoff between week 10 with the Panthers and then week 11 with the Lions. So if they can come out of those Thursday night games with wins, they get some extra rest going into big time divisional games.
Absolutely. And then you look at the last stretch of the schedule too, with the Christmas lights and the sparklers.
I like that.
Those are very winnable games for the Bears. And,
right.
Try to keep it real, but also, being a little optimistic at this point. Who knows what's going to happen? Didn't think what happened in 2018 was ever going to happen. I think there is a much better coach team. We'll see what happens because the schedule's favorable. Not saying that, they could pull a Lions and really surprise us, I think. So at the very least, hopefully they're playing meaningful football come November. That's all you can ask as a Bears fan.
Hey, if they're in the hunt and they got to play Arizona and Atlanta, and who knows what Green Bay is going to be in the last 3 weeks of the season, they're going to have one of the more favorable schedules going down the stretch if they're trying to get in. So we'll see. But I like that back end of the schedule. Absolutely.
Okay, John. So we're going to shift gears. So we're going to talk about stadium talk.
Love it.
So the plans for the Bears moving out of Soldier Field and leaving the city of Chicago are in limbo, given that the team is looking for a favorable tax setup from Arlington Heights, where they purchased property to build a new stadium. You're pretty familiar with the team, Sister Ed, so just a little bit, and legacy in Chicago. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the Bears potentially leaving the city and heading to the suburbs? 55 seconds.
Look, I love NFL history. I love the NFL films footage of steam spewing from the helmets of the players at Soldier Field and Lambeau Field, even Metropolitan Field out in Minnesota. I love the pageantry of the warriors of the gridiron colliding within the wild elements that would make normal humans curl into a ball. But I have the curse of being a pragmatic millennial. And yes, that's a real thing. It's not an oxymoron, I promise you. There are reasons the Rams play in Inglewood. There are reasons the Cowboys play in Arlington and the Jets and the Giants play in New Jersey. The NFL is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and stadiums must provide a first-class fan experience because watching the games on TV is hundreds of dollars cheaper, and the viewing experience on television has gotten incredible over the past 15 years. Not to mention, a fully enclosed entertainment destination can host concerts, conventions, Final Fours, Super Bowls, and it keeps the revenue streams open all year round for that particular stadium. So I get it.
Yeah, like you said, the history, that's the one thing that we're clinging to with the Bears staying in Chicago pretty much, right? And there's no doubting that. But like you said, it's kind of time for the Bears to get into the 21st century here and, create that state-of-the-art stadium, which, that's why Kevin Warren was brought here, right? So it's happening. It's just a matter of, when, there's, a lot of behind the scenes, stuff going on, but, Kevin Warren's doing his job. But, like you said, I'm excited to see what a Bears stadium would look like, a new state-of-the-art. I know it's going to be domed, but Bear weather. Yeah, that one Rams game in 2018, but Bear weather.
Where has it helped?
I'm not exactly
where has it won us a Super Bowl?
Still waiting.
Yeah.
We're on the clock here too.
But listen, Soldier Field is an amazing experience, and I hope everyone that wants to see a game there can see a game there. But it is a bit of a logistical nightmare. You have to take shuttles in and out. There isn't an entertainment district around the stadium to drive ticket holders to congregate around the stadium. You look at some of these other cities, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. They have these entertainment hubs right around the stadiums. In Philadelphia, there's this Xfinity Live area in the middle of all three major stadiums where there's thousands of people that flock into this thing, and they're all there before and after the game, and then they walk over to the stadiums because it's within walking distance. And so you need space for that, and you're not going to be able to do that where Soldier Field is. And people are, I understand Soldier Field was built over 100 years ago, but the Bears didn't move to Soldier Field until 1971 when they deemed Wrigley to be too small during the AFL-NFL merger. So, I mean, even though the stadium's been around for a long time, they've only been there since the 70s. And even when the Bears moved to Soldier Field, that was supposed to be temporary because they were looking at spaces where? In Arlington Heights, but it didn't come to fruition. So now they're just, history is kind of repeating itself. So I understand what they want to do, but it's not like it's Wrigley Field now or Fenway Park. They parked a spaceship where the old stadium used to be. So I mean, it lost its historical landmark license basically whenever they put that thing on there. So it's not like they're taking down this beautiful cathedral with Romanesque statues. I mean, the basis of it is still there, but they dropped a big spaceship there in 2002 to try to modernize it. And I think that it's kind of taken its place. It's run its course. So as much as I love the history of the game, sometimes you got to move on. And we've seen the new Yankee Stadium. We've seen, big old stadiums, kind of go by the wayside. And I think if the Bears are going to open up a new chapter, they can open up a new chapter in a new stadium as well. So we'll see.
Well said. Everything kind of coming full circle. Maybe, to start winning, maybe you build a new stadium. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it can't hurt. Good karma, all that. Yeah. So, John, your Uncle Doug was famous for his passion on the field during his 15 years as a linebacker for the Bears, and for his passion behind the microphone as a decades-long broadcaster. And knowing him as well as you do, what would Doug Buffone say about the state of the Chicago Bears heading into 2023? No clock needed for this one.
Thank you, because I was going to completely ignore it. We used to talk on the phone all the time. Right before he would come on my radio show, we'd spend, 20, 30, 40 minutes talking on the phone. And that was about 10 years ago now. So, wow. And we'd talk about the Bears, and we would talk about the NFL in general. And he'd always say, this game will never love you as much as you love it. And I knew he was talking from a player's point of view, and that's something that I could comprehend but not understand, if that makes any sense, because I didn't play in the NFL. But I think that phrase is applicable to fans as well. Your team will never love you as much as you love it. It's a toxic relationship, and they don't even have counseling for that type of dysfunction, I don't think. So, but if he were alive today and we were talking on the phone, I think he would say, it's time for the Bears to hold up their end of the deal. He was an incredibly fair man. If he made a deal, he saw it through. And I think that's how he would view the Bears right now. We invested time last year watching this team. We invested money in tickets and merchandise and TV sports packages. But we also invested patience. We understood that 2022 was going to be rough. We may not have realized how rough it was going to be. But you know what? My demeanor was somewhat calm last year. That surprised even me, because I knew we were investing in the future and that something was going to pay off for us down the line. So what do I think Uncle Doug would say now? I think he'd say, we held up our end of the bargain. It's time for the Bears to hold up theirs. That'll do it for this edition of B55. When we come back, we'll break down the rest of the roster. I think Danny Shimon is going to join us again. You're listening and watching Buffone 55 right here on the Barroom Network.
You've been praising the actors because, I didn't know the full context. You were saying because of the strike, they can't promote the show.
Yeah.
And you were putting over the actors, and like you were saying, it's not just because I wrote the book, it's because I like the show and it has so much to offer. And I just wanted to say the actor, I don't know his name, and I apologize for that, but my favorite actor on the show is the guy that plays Kareem. I think he's tremendous.
He's Dr. Awesome. Solomon Hughes, former center at Cal, the starting center at Cal back in the day. Solomon's amazing. And I always say, if you want to go all-time great casting jobs, Magic, Kareem. If you think about how familiar we are with Magic and Kareem, and we know them so well, and you think, who could possibly play Magic Johnson? Who could possibly play Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? And somehow they nailed those two. And neither guy, Quincy Isaiah plays Magic. He was a offensive lineman at Kalamazoo College, wasn't even a basketball player in college. And Solomon Hughes, who's now like 42 years old, college professor, PhD, played basketball at Cal, also no professional acting credits before this. They just nailed it. And the other one is Bird. Like Sean Patrick Small was the second choice to play Bird. Bo Burnham was the comedian, took the job, then walked away from it. And I feel like that was a blessing because Sean is phenomenal as Larry Bird. Right? Awesome. So they just cast this thing. And it's funny because when my wife and I first were watching season 1, when, like early on during the edits, we were getting the edits. And I saw Adrian Brody, just as an example. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know about that one. Like, I don't think I see Pat Riley and Adrian Brody. And then we watched the full episode. And by the end, we were both like, oh, I get it. And now when I see Adrian Brody, I see Pat Riley. It's just, they spare no expense.
And the kid that plays Norm Nixon is the actual son of Norm Nixon.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. It's kind of week 0 for us. We're not previewing week 1. We're just talking about the Bears. We're excited to be back talking to everybody in the chat room with the Barflies, and we're excited for anyone who downloads the show, watches the show. We'll get to all of that later, but we're here to finish up the rest of the roster, and we're going to move over to the defense because there has been a lot of overhauling this offseason. We welcome back Danny Shimon to talk about the rest of this roster, and we're going to start with the defensive line. You got Ngakoue coming over. You got DeMarcus Walker. They get Kareem off of the waivers. Pickens, Dexter, all these guys. A lot of new faces. Danny, this is something they had to address in the offseason. Have they done enough to be a force on that line to take the pressure off the linebackers and the DBs?
Have they done enough? Well, if you look at the way they played these 3 exhibition games, preseason games, I'd say no, because I mean that run defense was just getting gobbled up. But again, it is preseason. I'm not going to overreact. I said last year, John, you remember I was on those post game shows saying they got to get rid of all the starters. Well, they got rid of 3 out of the 4, and for me, Ngakoue was a huge get. And Marcus Walker too. I think he's a guy that's going to surprise some people as well. But for me, this defensive line is going to get better once those 2 young guys, Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, get more, accustomed to the NFL and then move into that starting lineup. Because again, once those 2 guys are in there, you'll see a big difference there. So, for me, it's still a wait and let's see. They did what they need to be done, which is they needed to go in and get new guys in, bring in guys. They had 20 sacks as a team last year, which is embarrassing. Their safety led them in sacks. So they needed to do a complete overhaul. And I think, to answer one of your questions, did they do enough? I don't know if they did enough, but they did. It was a good start. And again, when Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, they're still young and raw. One's better as a run defender, that's Dexter, and the other one's better as more of as an upfield pass rusher. Once those 2 guys get their feet under them and they eventually move into that starting lineup, I think then we're going to see the potential of this defensive line kind of then go up from there.
Alyssa, they spent pretty high draft picks trying to bolster this offensive line, and then they go out and they get Ngakoue. To Danny's point, it's not like they set the league on fire in the preseason, but anything would probably have to be better than last year, right? When I believe their leading sack getter was it Brisker? And then number 2 was Roquan, who got traded halfway through the season. So what? Yeah. So
God, I want to hide.
So what? I mean, the bar has to be set kind of low, but you also don't want to just be like, oh, just be a tiny bit better, because that was pretty bad last year.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal. I mean, just 20 sacks. I mean, just like how bad it was. I know it's preseason, but that first preseason game, they had 8 sacks. And then when you kind of think of those 2 numbers and you think of one game compared to 17, it's bad. So, I mean, there's no, getting around that. And to Danny's point, I don't know if it's enough. I think, like he said, it's a good start. I think that if you look at what Ryan Poles has done this offseason at a number of these positions, that struggled last season is, he's adding to them, right? He's building, he's making them better. If you look at the defensive line group from last year compared to now, it's much better, right? I think it's much better, at least on paper. We'll see once the season starts. But I think that, can you get worse than last year? That's my question. I really don't want to tempt fate, but it was pretty bad. But when you go out and you get someone like Yannick Ngakoue, who hasn't had less than 8 sacks, since he came into the league. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And that's something that the Bears need, especially considering, Brisker led the team with 4 last season. So, I mean, I think the beginning is there. And I think that, having Ngakoue there, even if for a year, I think he's, obviously like the short-term solution. But I think, to Danny's point about, Javon Dexter and Zach Pickens really taking the next step and them kind of breaking out. I think having a veteran like Ngakoue in there will really benefit them. And we've seen that too, or heard about it at least at training camp when Ngakoue had taken Dexter aside and was showing him some pass rush moves. So I think just having a veteran presence like that in the room will help the young guys. And you got to hope that Dexter and Pickens, you got to hope that, at least one of them will become a cornerstone of this defense. Cause I mean, they have 2 first-round picks. So, I mean, we'll see how they address it. I think one would definitely be for, I know I'm already thinking to the draft. Sorry, it's habit.
I've already started. It's okay. I've already started.
Yeah, you might be.
I'm always thinking ahead like that, but definitely I think one will be on the edge rusher. But I'm interested to see how this group performs this season. Preseason, it was preseason, so I'm ready to see them in regular season action.
As am I, because I want to see what they can do, because I want to see these linebackers be able to run around a little bit, because they have a brand new kind of starting team they're running out there compared to last year at this time. You got Tremaine Edmonds, who was brought over, TJ Edwards, who was brought over, Jack Sanborn, who was discovered, and then you draft, and then you got Cole and Sewell. No, Sewell, I think, has the physical abilities of this crazy physical abilities. Let's see if they can develop that a little bit. But Alyssa, I'm going to start with you. Compared to what we saw last year, what they were going into it with last year, they revamp it. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again because they did the same thing with the defensive line. But they go out and they spend some serious cash on linebacker. This is going to be a vastly different unit. What do you expect for these guys?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of going back to the fact that Poles has just revamped positions from last season. This is one of the biggest, obviously, when you go out and you spend big on Edmonds and Edwards. Hoping I don't mix their names up sometimes. But, when you look at last season too, Nicholas Morrow, their top linebacker, he was just cut from the Eagles. So, I mean, that kind of tells you exactly kind of where that Bears linebacker group was last year. Sanborn, he was a great, one of the best surprises from last season. And, he'll factor into things. But, getting Edmonds and Edwards out there together too, because Edmonds has been sidelined for the summer. So they really had to kind of get that communication down. So we kind of caught a little glimpse of it in that final preseason game. But I mean, I feel like Edmonds is everything that Eberflus is looking for in a middle linebacker. I think that we saw Poles really address the position and double down on it. And especially we saw how bad the run defense was last season. And hopefully the defensive line can help them out a bit. But I think that the Bears have a top 3 linebacker group for sure.
And, talent is important, but so is the scheme, Danny. So I want to pivot real quick and ask you about, we're talking about all the extra talent added to linebacking core and the investment on the defensive line. Do you anticipate seeing anything different from a schematic point of view? Because they were incredibly vanilla last year, didn't do a whole lot to change things up now. And that could be because of their lack of talent. But do you anticipate them doing anything different this year schematically?
God, John, I hope they do, because I mean, Alan Williams and the defensive coaching staff is under a microscope for me, because I mean, last year, like you said, lack of talent, no pass rush. And I just wanted them to get creative. You're getting beaten anyway. You're getting up chunk yards. You have to sell out to stop the run. Even that wasn't working. Bring the house. Let's do something different. Let's get out of your base. I know your base is just rush 4 guys with your front 4, drop back in coverage and create turnovers, but it wasn't working. You don't have the talent. We all admit that. But just be creative. Do something different. And he was just vanilla. It was just the defense kept getting gashed, and it was just the same thing on repeat week in and week out. And so Alan Williams, you've got talent now. right? And you've got a legit pass rusher up front. You've got 2 linebackers. I think Edmonds and Edwards are going to help them tremendously in pass coverage. I think most of the time, I think about 70% of the time, if I'm not mistaken, the Bears were in their nickel or dime package, in which they only had 2 linebackers. And this year it's going to be Edwards and it's going to be Edmonds. And I think those guys, especially Edmonds with his length and his size, roaming the middle of that field, I think that's going to be a big deterrent, hopefully, for anybody that's trying to threat the Bears in that middle of that defense. So I think that's where you're going to see some of that. Let's get creative. Tremaine Edmonds, I have not seen him done this yet in the NFL, but I saw when I was scouting him. Stand up in a 2-point stance and rush him off the edge. Let's get a little creative here. Even if you don't bring him, drop back in coverage, make the opposing offense think he's coming off the edge, and just get creative in terms of your disguises and your blitzes. Even though they're not a blitzing team, they like to get to the quarterback with their front 4. But again, this defensive coaching staff is going to be under a huge microscope for me this year. I'm going to see how they take these kids and put them in spots where they can succeed and hopefully make this defensive unit better. Because if you're in the middle of the pack defensively, potentially offensively, you can possibly see, like Alyssa, you mentioned earlier, there was a 3 or 5 game stretch there where the Bears were scoring 30 points a game. But they lost all 5 games because, except for the New England game, because the defense was giving up more points than the Bears were scoring. So, I think if the offense is going to take that next step up, if you have a middle of the pack defense, you're going to end up getting some of those victories that you couldn't seal last year.
Danny, real quick, do you think it's too early or unfair to say that Alan Williams could be on the hot seat this year? Because there was a big lack of talent last year, and I don't know if you want to hold that against a guy, and then you don't want to kind of just, cut bait with him after, 1 year with the new guys. So do you think that he's at least here for 1-2 years?
Well, yeah, to put him on a hot seat, that is it is unfair because of the lack of talent that last year. My concern with him was the lack of creativity when there was no talent. It was just basically throwing his hands up like, this is my scheme, this is what I got, that's all I can do right now. But this year, when he's got some more talent, is he going to be just a base Tampa 4 guy where just the 4 guys rush, maybe occasionally you'll see a linebacker blitz here and there? If you're not generating pressure, what are you going to do, Alan Williams? How are you going to go ahead and now take this unit that's improved with talent? And we'll get to another unit, the secondary, later on here. But you have talent galore there. How are you going to go ahead and take this team at its strengths and use it to make this defense at least middle of the pack at worst, right? I talked about the preseason. That run defense looked horrible. Well, guess what? Week 1, you got AJ Dillon and you got Aaron Jones coming, so that's going to be a big test right away out of the gate. So let's see what they do. To put them under the hot seat will be, it's a little bit unfair. That's why I'm giving him a big, this season right now. I want to see what he does, how he copes. All we heard was, they were going to come in with that Tampa 2, base, but they're also going to get creative off of that with his coverage, with its blitzes and all that stuff. So we didn't see it last year. We're giving them the mulligan because of the lack of talent. This year, I want to see some creativity. I want to see a better overall defensive unit.
You mentioned that other unit, so let's go over to the cornerbacks, because I think that's going to be a strength of this defense. The cornerbacks on this team from top to bottom, they invested draft picks in it. They still got Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, who I think is going to be a great player. Smith, Blackwell, and Jones rounding out the room. Alyssa, I'm going to start with you. Once again, kind of a different looking, not overly different because you still got Gordon and Johnson there, but still just a kind of a different looking squad there. No Kendall Vildor, who I believe was picked up by the Titans off of waivers today. But what do you think about this cornerback room?
Yeah, looking at it, I think it's another improved group. You look at Jalen Johnson entering a contract year, so he has a lot to prove as Ryan Poles has a decision here to make. And I think just from the limited action we saw Kyler Gordon, especially in that first preseason game, and even in training camp too, he just kind of looks like a different player. Remember back early last season, we were freaking out about Kyler Gordon, and he settled into things at the end of his rookie year. And I think really sticking him in the nickel and just having him play one position is going to be very beneficial for him. And to see that physicality kind of coming out as well, I think just having Kyler Gordon improved, like another year under his belt, I think that's going to be huge. And you go to the rookies too. Tyreek Stevenson, I mean, he's going to be starting on the outside opposite Jalen Johnson. And we saw him in the preseason. I mean, he has his moments, his ups and downs. But, I mean, again, we saw that with Kyler Gordon last season. It's going to happen to rookies, especially near cornerback. Very difficult position to play. And Terrell Smith has been, a surprise as well. Like the way he was playing in training camp, that kind of forced that competition with Tyreek Stevenson, and it was kind of bringing out the best in both of them. I think that just getting those two rookies and adding them to that group of Jalen and Kyler, I think that this cornerback group, like you said, John, I think this could be a strength. And the secondary in general could be a strength for this defense. And you have some insurance there in Blackwell and Jones, Jalen Jones, getting 2 undrafted rookies from last year, right? That they made the roster again. Blackwell gives them that insurance in the nickel spot in case something, God forbid, happens to Kyler. And Jalen Jones is another option as well. So I think that, the Bears, again, improved at a position that could be a strength of the defense.
And Danny, I want to ask you, when you look over that, cornerback room, and obviously Stevenson and Johnson will be on the outside. Do you feel comfortable, or are you happy that they're kicking Kyler inside and they're letting Johnson and Stevenson take out? They're going to be control the outside and let Kyler Gordon play inside.
Well, going back when Gordon was drafted, I had scouted him as an outside corner. I don't see his strengths being inside, but that's where this defensive, coaching staff is going to pluck him and put him at the nickel. So we'll see how he goes ahead and plays there. But I think last year when there's some injuries, I thought you saw Gordon kind of move out to the outside, and I think that's where you saw him kind of spark and play better overall as an outside corner. And again, that's where I see him eventually moving to. But in terms of this room here, the secondary as a whole, I think this potentially has a potential to be one of the better secondaries in football. Now they're young now. Tyreek Stevenson is going to draw flags. He's a very physical corner. He's a guy that doesn't back down from anybody. You love that feistiness about him. You love his ability to go ahead and just kind of forget the last play and come back. But again, at a certain point, those flags, those holding calls, some of the blown coverages we've seen in preseason, that's going to come back and haunt him. And going back to draft day 2, when they took Stevenson, I like Stevenson coming out of Miami, but I was higher on Terrell Smith out of Minnesota, and that's who they took in the later round, in the 5th round. And I think this is a kid that has a chance to really develop here. I'm not sure he'll be here in his rookie season, but I think he's a guy that developed into a good starter here for the Bears. I think I saw him at the East-West Shrine game in the practices, and the scouts were all talking about Terrell Smith. So I keep an eye on Terrell Smith. That's why I'm saying potentially this is a team or a unit that can be one of the better ones in the league, and they're all young. Blackwell, we talked about last year, he was a undrafted free agent from Philly. They cut him last cuts. Bears picked him up. And I think he acquitted himself nicely in terms of as a slot corner last year as well. So brings that physicality, has the ability, the quickness to be able to play that two-way goal on those quicker, shiftier inside slot receivers. So I think he's a guy that not to just kind of throw away on the wayside there as well. And Jalen Jones, I mean, he came in last year when Johnson got hurt, and he kind of, had some bumps in the road. Obviously, it was a rookie, but I think so far we've seen him do this year, at least in the preseason, is just up his game as a gunner on special teams. And he's been making big time plays on special teams. I think that's where he's going to help there as well. So I'm very high on the Bears secondary. So that's why if you get some pressure up front with those front 4, you got a secondary now that can go ahead and make some plays on the football.
Let's stick with that secondary and let's go right into the safeties, because these are 2 of my favorite players that are on the Bears. You got Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker, and then Hickson Johnson, and who they just got off waivers, rounding out the safety position. Danny, I'll start with you. Could be another step forward with Brisker if he can stay healthy, and then Eddie Jackson had a little bit of a resurgence last year. What can we expect out of the safeties?
Yeah, Eddie Jackson's got to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, and you saw his ability to come back last year in terms of being more of a ball hawk, got some interceptions, got his hands on the football. Jaquan Brisker, again, another one that's got these little nicks, little dings here and there. It's got to stay healthy. But I think that potentially, again, could be a very, very nice, starting safety tandem in the NFL. Brisker, again, just a physical guy that can play in the box, but also shows some ability to drop back in coverage. Eddie Jackson, we've talked about in years past where he's had some issues in terms of wrapping up tackling. Some of that got cleaned up last year, and the interceptions came back. So that's the thing with him, is to just be a ball hawking safety like he was in Alabama, like he was in his first couple seasons here with the Bears. You'll bring that guy back now, and that's going to be even bigger boost there. And just real quick, I like Elijah Hicks, the backup there, the kid from Cal, second-year player, looks like a little bigger. He's a guy that also will put his nose in there and come down and wrap up and make tackles. And then real quick, if I can, John, on this kid, Quindell Johnson, they just picked up today from the Rams. I saw him from Memphis. The thing I like about him, I was watching him, I was scouting him for the draft. And, the first thing you look at is 6 feet, 201 pounds. Kid's got, 33-inch arms. He's got the length, so size and length you like about him. Aggressive downhill attacker. A guy will come down and wrap up, in terms of as a run defender, can transition quickly out of his back pedal, come down and wrap up anything in front of him. And then the thing, he's got the size to cover tight ends in the slot and ball production. You look at his career at Memphis, this guy finds the ball, gets his hands on the football, 10 career interceptions, 24 pass defense, and then 4 forced fumbles. So there's another guy potentially bring in here that can develop and be another ball hawking potential safety in the secondary. So I love this secondary, the safety room right now.
We heard the term ball hawk a lot, Alyssa. Do you hoping these safeties can turn the ball over a lot to keep giving the ball back to the offense in good field position?
In a perfect world, yes. And I think like Danny said, we saw that last season with Eddie Jackson before he went down with injury, and kind of getting back to, the Eddie Jackson that we'd seen from the first couple of seasons. And I think like having Brisker and bringing back that duo, who I think could be a top safety duo in the league, that's going to be really important for the Bears, and I'm excited to see what they can do. My concern heading into, this season would be at depth, because I like what I've seen from Elijah Hicks, but them moving on from DeAndre Houston Carson, core special teamer, and he was always that third safety in there. Hoping that Elijah Hicks can really step into that role, because as we've seen, Eddie Jackson and Brisker, they were out. They've missed most of the summer with injury, which that's been beneficial for Elijah Hicks at least to get those reps in the preseason. But I think that would probably be my only concern. And you couple the safety group, the starting duo of Brisker and Jackson, with that cornerback group, and like Danny said, maybe this could be one of the top secondaries in the league.
Let's hope. And so that will round out the offense and the defense, but it wouldn't be a Buffone 55 unless we talk some Bears special teams. So let's bring up the special teams graphic. Cairo Santos, Trenton Gill, and Patrick Scales. Danny, give us a 20 to 30-minute rundown on. No, I'm kidding. What do you think about?
You're lucky if you get 20 seconds out of me on these guys.
What do you feel about these guys?
Obviously, Santos, veteran kicker, has been reliable for the most part in terms of his Bears career. So he had a couple misses last year, kind of worried you a little bit, but hopefully he rebounds and becomes the reliable. What was that streak at 50 straight field goals or something like that at one point? So hopefully he picks up there. Trenton Gill actually has been a very good pickup. I think a 7th round pick last year. Good strong leg. He's a guy that I think is really impressed. His rookie campaign, I think so far in the preseason, he looked pretty good as well. Patrick Scales is a long snapper. I don't see any bad snaps, so I think he's good. So
that's the analysis you come here for. Scales, he's a long snapper. No, Alyssa, you've been with this show long enough to know that we love talking about Bears kickers, and we've had plenty of them to talk about in the past few seasons. What do you feel about the special teamers here?
Yeah, again, bringing back the same group from last season, I think with Cairo, there was an interesting moment of the offseason when the Bears had signed that undrafted kicker, Andre Schmidt. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, where people are like, oh, could Cairo's job be, at stake here? I think it was a little overreacting at that point. Because, Cairo did have those misses with the extra points. And, Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator, said that's something that, Cairo has kind of worked on. He's fixed. And it's never easy kicking at Soldier Field anyways. But I think that with Cairo, and I believe he's entering the last year of his deal as well. But Santos has been consistent. And when is the last time we had a consistent kicker before Robbie Gould? We have.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that you were talking about the offseason. There was another moment when people thought Robbie Gould was going to be available, and they're like, oh, we got to bring him back. We get him on the phone.
He's available. He's still
I think he is still available. Yeah, he's gonna land with somebody eventually. But
did you notice yesterday there were like, I think 2 or 3 trades of kickers. So kickers are becoming more and more important now in the NFL.
Just how we like it here in Chicago. It wouldn't be a real Buffone 55 unless we talked about some obscure if we didn't bring up some obscure analysis. You know what, Aldo? Throw up the practice squad, guys. There they are. We got Micah Baskerville, Travis Bell, Robert Burns, Stephen Carlson, Avante Collins, DeMarquise Gates, Jalen Harris, Greg Stroman, Simba Webster, who was catching balls from Justin Fields late last year, Kendall Williamson, Bill Murray, Chicago legend, and Roy Mbekta. I'm guessing it's not the same Bill Murray. But not. I'm not even going to throw this to anyone in particular. Does anyone have to say anything about anybody on the practice squad? Danny, I'm sure you know one or two of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Micah Baskerville was a linebacker out of LSU. I'm just a free agent. He's a guy that showed pretty good potential in terms of being able to man that Mike position. Was pretty good on special teams. So I think that's where he's going to go ahead and kind of just sit there and just, God forbid someone gets hurt, I think he's a guy that can come in and fill in there as well. Travis Bell was their 7th round pick. I think Ryan Poles talked glowingly about him in terms of after the draft, in terms of the young man, his character. Obviously a raw kid. I think I forgot which school he was off from, but it was a real small school. So he's a guy, he's a developmental guy, a guy that can go in there and just, develop, hopefully get into become a better overall football player. Robert Burns really did impress me. He's a fullback. I'm on record saying I'm not a big Kari Blasting game fan in terms of as a fullback. So I think Robert Burns, if you can develop him, we'll see how he's good in terms of passing the ball, catching the ball at the backfield. Stephen Carlson, the tight end, 4-year pro out of Princeton, made some nice plays. Had that big drop in the end zone for that touchdown that Tyson Bagent threw him in that last preseason game. So that didn't look good on his resume. Avante Collins is a big athletic left tackle out of TCU. I think that's a guy that they're putting back there in terms of, again, insurance. DeMarquise Gates has been on this practice squad for the last couple seasons. So we'll see how that goes there. Greg Stroman Jr., again, another veteran corner who's been solid in terms of, has got some play with Washington and some other teams as well, I believe Carolina. So he's a guy that, again, depth in terms of if you need someone in a pinch or, God forbid a season-ending injury. Simba Webster, I'm not sure why he keeps coming back. Just diminutive receiver, I guess, doesn't really do much for me. Kendall Williamson is a 7th round pick, a part of the draft class that is a big athletic safety guy that they could probably, hopefully they're looking to stash and go ahead and develop there as well. So Bill Murray, I have no idea. I've not seen Bill Murray play. So, but I have nothing on Bill Murray. And my hope, though, is that Terrell Lewis passes through waivers. They can add him back onto the practice squad. And then also, obviously, AJ Thomas as well, the guy they cut to today to make room for Johnson, that the pickup they got from the Rams. So hopefully those two guys are added back to the practice squad. So, there's some players there. And I think Nathan Peterman, there's a chance he might come back to the practice squad too, though, although Poles kind of left it open there in terms of that. It sounded like, if you read through the tea leaves there, it sounded like they're still in the hunt for a veteran quarterback, so we'll see what happens there. But I mean, I think there should be some more additions, couple more additions to that practice squad before week 1 rolls around here.
That was way more than I needed to hear about the Bears practice squad. I'm just taken aback that you knew where all these guys went to college and what their stories were. So that's exactly why we bring you on, because you can give us the information that I would not even remotely have an idea about. But the real question about this coming out of this is, what is your favorite Bill Murray movie? Because I think that's the real thing here. I'm going to put you guys on the spot right now. What's your favorite Bill Murray movie? Somebody just blurt something out.
Groundhog Day.
Oh, I was going to say Groundhog Day.
We're all saying it's clean sweep.
That's why I went first.
The easy way out.
Man, I was going to. Stripes was good. Love Stripes. I loved his cameo in Zombieland. I think
yes.
There's plenty of. There's plenty of. I'm sure I'm missing a ton.
Space Jam.
He was in Space Jam. Yeah. You got Ghostbusters, Caddyshack. I mean, there's a lot to choose from there. So I hope that Bill Murray stays in a Bears uniform so we can continue this conversation. There might even be the Bill Murray minute at the end of every Buffone 55. If we play our cards right, or if the Bears are completely out of contention, we're gonna have to find some content. But that's a real possibility.
What about Bob? That was a good movie too.
What about Bob's a great movie too. You know what? This is gonna be a season worth of content here. This needs to stay. He needs to stay.
Are you throwing the towel in already, John?
No, I'm just saying he needs to be elevated. Bring him on the active roster. We need the Bill Murray minute at the end of every show. Scrooge, that's another good one.
Yeah, I think Bill Murray was that good, but apparently he's got a lot of good movies.
If you do the inventory about it, then he really is. But I guess we can close the show talking about football. But we went through all the positions there: offense, defense. Could be some more shuffling around. We'll see. Big game coming up. Gosh, we are so close to football, guys. It's incredible that the offseason went as fast as it did. But we will have the season premiere of Buffone 55. Well, this was the season premiere of Buffone 55. We'll have the actual preview show going up against the Packers next week. But before we pull down the shades, Alyssa, tell us what's going on over at the NFL Wire, Bears Wire. What are you working on? I'm sure you've already put out 95 articles today, but go on.
What isn't going on? I mean, the busiest time I feel like of the year with roster cuts. So we have you covered with roster cuts. We're going to be starting our pre-game, pre-season, pre-regular season coverage. So we got you covered there. I'm going to be putting out some last minute record predictions. So I'm going to go back through. I'm going to look at all those glorious schedule and just kind of make my pick there and see. I'm going to go into this feeling a little optimistic, but also trying to keep it realistic. But yeah, make sure you're going over to Bears Wire. Check out everything we got going on there.
Excellent. And Danny, what's going on? What are you working on at the Barroom Network? Anything going on with Draft on Tap?
Yeah, well, Draft on Tap obviously is hiatus right now. That's going to come back after the Bears season concludes. But we have some changes, some wrinkles to Draft on Tap that I'm excited about to obviously introduce to and kind of present to the audience. That's going to be later on in the season here. But and in terms of the season, the college football season has already started. It started last week. I've already been looking at the next group of draft class starting off before last week, even before that. So I've got my list here. I'm going through it, and I'm going to be doing some video scouting reports, posting them on the Barroom Network. So for all the draft gurus out there, all of my followers on Draft on Tap, look for those on the Barroom Network, and I'm going to be posting up some players that I think Bears fans can keep an eye on that potentially could fit needs for the Bears. Obviously, you guys know I love the offense and defensive lines, and that's where I started. I'm looking at offensive linemen, I'm looking at defensive linemen, particularly edge rushers for defense, and obviously interior offensive linemen for moving on forward here. So look for those on the Barroom Network. I'll be kind of posting those here and there, just to kind of keep everyone in the loop here in terms of potential draft picks heading towards the 2024 NFL Draft. Where remember, Bears got 2 first-round picks, so it's going to be a fun time.
Excellent. Well, that will kind of wrap it up for this season premiere. Danny, welcome as the full-time panelist on the show. We are excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
Season 7 kicking off. Alyssa, appreciate you being with us again, because you know what? This is just fun. We this is our therapy session for a lot of the times. At least for the years that we've been doing it, most of the time it's the therapy session whenever we're here. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Don't forget to join Danny, me, and our new analyst, Coach T, on Bear Football, our After the Game show. The three of us will share our immediate reactions and carry Coach Eberflus and Justin Fields' press conference and break down key plays of the game. That's Bear Football immediately after every Bears game. But that'll do it for us tonight. For Alyssa Barbieri and Danny Shimon, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next week here on Buffone 55 when we preview the Bears and Packers in week 1. Let's go, baby. We'll see you next week.
Some may find